The maintenance hatch sealed behind Lieutenant Mara Voss with a pneumatic hiss that sent ice through her veins. She spun around, her toolkit clattering to the floor as she grabbed the interior handle. It didn't budge. No, she muttered, pulling harder. The red light above the door frame blinked mockingly. Emergency lockdown. Of course Mara pressed her comm badge. Static. The reinforced walls of the enclosure were designed to contain the galaxy's apex predators. They weren't about to let a simple radio signal through. She was trapped in the cub nursery of the Vraxian battlecruiser Bloodfang, surrounded by the offspring of the most feared warriors in known space. A low growl rumbled from the shadows. Mara's breath caught. She'd been sent to repair a faulty environmental regulator, a simple 20-minute job. The cubs were supposed to be in the observation dome with their handlers, but as her eyes adjusted to the dim, bioluminescent lighting, she counted 6 pairs of eyes gleaming in the darkness. 6 cubs, each one already the size of an earth tiger, with crystalline fangs and claws that could shred durasteel. The largest stepped forward into the light. Tarek. She'd heard the handlers call his name during feeding times. His scales shimmered midnight blue, and the early ridge formations along his spine marked him as barely 6 months old. In another year, he'd be combat ready. Right now, he was simply terrifying. Easy, Mara whispered, raising her empty hands. I'm not here to hurt you. Tarek's head tilted, his triple-pupiled eyes tracking her movement. Behind him, the other cubs began to emerge, smaller, curious, making chittering sounds that reminded Mara disturbingly of hunting calls. She backed against the wall, her mind racing. Vraxians respected strength, but these were children. Babies, really. Her xenobiology training kicked in. Don't run. Don't show fear. Establish yourself as non-threatening but not prey. I know you probably think I'm weird, she said softly, sliding down to sit cross-legged on the floor. The cubs froze at the movement. I think you're weird too. We're even. Tarek took another step closer. His nostrils flared, scenting her. Mara forced herself to remain still as his massive head came within inches of her face. She could see every serrated edge of his teeth, smell the metallic tang of his breath. One bite. That's all it would take. Instead, he snorted, a wet, curious sound, and sat down. The tension in Mara's shoulders eased a fraction. The other cubs, emboldened by their leader, crept forward. Within minutes, she was surrounded. A smaller female, Mara guessed from the more delicate bone structure, pressed a cold snout against her arm. Another pawed at her toolkit with surprising gentleness. Not toys, Mara said, slowly pulling the toolkit closer. But I get it. You're bored. She'd been terrified of these creatures all week. The Vraxian delegation had come aboard the human research station as part of an unprecedented cultural exchange. Humanity's first real alliance with a predator species. The cubs were a gesture of trust, future warriors being raised, alongside human children in the station's interspecies youth program. But humans still remembered the frontier wars, still woke up, sweating from nightmares of Vraxian raiding parties. The peace was new, fragile, and Mara had grown up on horror stories about what Vraxians did to their enemies. Yet here she sat, surrounded by cubs who seemed more interested in playing than killing. Hours passed. Mara's initial terror faded into exhausted acceptance. She told the cubs stories. About Earth, about her childhood in the Mars colonies, about the time she'd accidentally vented an entire deck because she'd mixed up 2 similar-looking valves. They couldn't understand her words, but they responded to her tone. Tarek remained closest, occasionally huffing as if in response. When Mara's eyelids grew heavy, she fought it. She couldn't sleep here, couldn't let her guard down, but the environmental systems hummed their lullaby, and the cubs had settled into a pile of scales and warmth. Almost peaceful. Just 5 minutes, she murmured, her head nodding forward. Tarek shifted closer. His massive body curled around her like a living wall, and the other cubs pressed in. Instinct screamed at her to move, to escape, but exhaustion won. Within moments, Mara was asleep, cradled in a nest of deadly predators who somehow recognized her as something worth protecting. She dreamed of home. The crash of splintering metal yanked Mara from sleep. She jerked upright, disoriented, to find Tarek on his feet, scales flared, roaring at the maintenance hatch. The door had been blown inward, smoke curling from the edges. Through the haze, armored figures poured in. Vraxian elite guard, their weapons charged and ready. Behind them came Commander Scareth, the battlecruiser's second-in-command. His eyes, cold enough to freeze atmosphere, locked onto the scene before him. A human, surrounded by cubs, alive, stand down, he barked at his soldiers. Tarek snarled, positioning himself between Mara and the guards. The other cubs had scattered to the walls, frightened but unwilling to flee. Mara struggled to her feet, her voice hoarse. Wait, don't hurt them. They didn't do anything wrong. Scareth's expression shifted through several emotions she couldn't read. You've been missing for 8 hours. We thought, he paused. We thought we would find your remains. I got locked in. The cubs, they just stayed with me. Mara looked at Tarek, who still vibrated with protective fury. He kept me warm. A ripple of shock passed through the guards. One lowered his weapon completely, staring at the tableau. Impossible, Scareth breathed. Cubs this age are aggressive, territorial. They should have, but they didn't, Mara interrupted. She stepped forward, placing a hand on Tarek's scaled shoulder. He calmed immediately, leaning into her touch. Maybe that's what peace looks like. Maybe that's what it means when species choose trust over instinct. Scareth was silent for a long moment. Then he inclined his head, a gesture of deep respect among his people. The elders will want to hear of this, he said quietly. A human survived the night with our young. More than survived, earned their protection. His eyes met hers. You have done more for our alliance than 1,000 treaties, Lieutenant Voss. As the guards escorted her out, Mara looked back at Tarek. The cub watched her go, and for just a moment, she could have sworn she saw something like understanding in those alien eyes. Humanity had spent so long being afraid of monsters in the dark. Perhaps they'd forgotten that sometimes even monsters could choose gentleness, and that was the most human thing of all.